Good afternoon, and welcome to MacNeil Chapel. And on behalf of the family of Ina Schnell and Plymouth Harbor, we welcome you all this afternoon as we celebrate and remember the life and the legend of Ina Schnell. Just the lives she's touched and the people she's known. And it's just a time for us to celebrate and remember her. So join us and join me in our opening. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has bestowed every goodness upon us. Amen. May the one who has bestowed goodness upon us continue to bestow every goodness upon us forever. Friends and family, we gather here in the protective shelter of God's healing love. We are here to celebrate the life of Ina Schnell as she is under God's eternal care. We are free to open our hearts, shed our tears, face our emptiness, even as we draw strength from the promises of God for our lives. We come to comfort and to support one another in our common loss. We gather to commend to God with thanksgiving the life of Ina as we celebrate her life. Our scripture reading is Psalm 23. Will you join me and say together, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. At this time, as I was going through this preparation and remembering and seeing the pictures of Ina and knowing Ina, she had an aura about her, a light that shined, that whoever met her, met them with a smile and a peace that just passes all understanding. And so the symbol of light, the symbol of candles, is that light that we have in our darkness, that little light that shines, that brings hope, brings comfort, brings peace. And I really think for Ina and how she lived and how she held her life, she was that light that brought illumination to others who might be in darkness. And so her light will shine. So we light the first candle, which represents our grief. The pain of losing her is intense. It reminds us of the depth of our love for her. The second candle represents our courage to confront our sorrow, to comfort each other, and to change our lives. The third candle we light is in her memory. For the times we laughed, the times we cried, the times we were angry with each other, the silly things she did, the caring and the joy that she gave us. And the fourth candle we light for our love. We light this candle that her light will always shine. We cherish this special place in our hearts that will always be reserved for her. We thank her for the gift of her living that brought to each of us the hope, the love, the grace. We remember her and we love her. And friends, Ina was indeed a special individual. I got to know her a little bit, but most of the time that I knew her, she had already gone over to Smith Care. But I do remember when I first started here, there was an aura about her that whenever she was out and about, she always had a smile. And I think that's the one thing that I'll always remember. And even in Smith Care, she still had a smile. Whenever I went into the room and greeted her, she would always look up and smile. And it just that peaceful, that comforting, that grace that she had and she had about her. And so that is what I will remember from her, and knowing that there was so much of her life that she was giving, that she had given so much, supported so much, and been active. She was active in the community in Sarasota, active here in Plymouth Harbor. It was just truly a light that shined, and we will always remember that light. May it give us our hope and our peace. And at this time, I will ask Kate Alexander to come up. She has a reading that she's going to read for Eric Schnell.
As the chaplain said, Eric has asked me to read it for him. These are his words. He asked that since the public side of her life is fairly well known, he wanted to share some personal stories of growing up with his mother. My mother loved entertaining, every aspect of it. From crafting menus to compiling guest lists, she would stay up late into the night working out the smallest of details. She loved introducing people who she thought would enjoy meeting each other, but these introductions sometimes had a more serious purpose of connecting people who might benefit from each other's talents. So, at one time or another, each of you may have been set up with someone on the slide. There were also the everyday family dinners. I remember one year, some old disused herb beds had caught her attention, and she decided she would replant them with an assortment of her own. The garden grew well overall, but it was her sorrel crop that had really produced abundantly. Eventually, a soup and bread production facility began around the clock, the operations in our kitchen, until enough had been produced to completely fill up our spare freezer. Sorrel soup. and a thick slice of brown bread was the nearly unvarying first course throughout that fall and winter. And when the stocks finally ran out in the spring, I believe even our cook was thankful. The next year, the beds were overflowing with basil. And to our delight, we discovered that pesto does really make everything taste better. In the summertime, we used to pick wildflowers from the nearby fields and meadows, and my mother always seemed to know the common names of the plants we collected, including lily of the valley, which she repeatedly warned me never to put in my mouth. She started to enter flower arranging contests in the late 80s. And of all of her activities, this one allowed her the freest expression of her creativity. Now, one arrangement particularly struck in my mind. We had carried 4 shopping bags full of foliage earlier in the day, and immediately after dinner, my mother went into the garage to get to work. When she called us down a few hours later to view her creation, instead of the lush arrangement we expected to find, there was a minimalist design. It consisted of one solitary leaf, slightly curved to one side at the top, like a cocked head. A single pink ribbon of plant fiber wrapped around this leaf like a sash around its waist, held a pair of curved stems tucked crosswise like a pair of pirate's cutlasses, and then a few oval-shaped leaves poked out above like the handles of flintlock pistols. And around this table, as if in heaps at his feet, lay the vegetal remains of his numerous victims. Pink Jack eventually went on to win Best in Show. Another time, she returned home with this basket full of preserves from the botanical garden gift shop, rhubarb jelly. It had been a slow-moving item, and Mom thought she would help out by personally stimulating some sales and at the same time, cheering up the local producer. Over the next months, rhubarb jelly was offered to us on the table at every mealtime, where it remained untouched, while the sister jars sat passed over on the pantry shelf as my father and I looked for the more palatable preserves made with berries. Then one day, she just disappeared from the table along with all of the other jars from the pantry shelf. Yet still, my mother's original mission had been accomplished, and her implicit message about participating in the life of your community, even if only in a small way, that was understood. I was always moving around bits and pieces of this natural world to further her scheme to tidy up nature. And when her voice wouldn't carry on the wind, quick semaphoric waves of her arms showed me where to drag off some woody carcass. To my eyes, this was an early demonstration of her formidable organizational skills. But to hers, it could have been proof of how well the mother-child connection operated, even at a distance. Later, she would bring this same energy, enthusiasm, and effort to more complex and challenging projects, like the Sarasota Reading Festival and the On the Edge Arts Festival. Education and the arts were her 2 passions, and she once told me that these projects had been the most fulfilling yet exhausting ones she had ever worked on. As I started to write this, I ran across an entry in her journal that neatly summed up her personality. and outlook on life. So I will close with my mother's own words. I have a lot of energy. I like to be busy, be challenged, be active and involved in things that interest me. Special relationships are very important. New ideas or new ways of revealing how society works appeal to me. I want to take part in what is happening now in our lives and in our times. Finally, I want to thank the staff of the Smith Care Center, the care management team of Heather, Christine, Jessica, Joy, and of course, Carla, her aide and friend, for all the devoted care, attention, and comfort you provided. For you always were treating her with dignity, and for the sense of relief you gave me by knowing how well looked after she was when I was back in New York City. Everything you did for my mom is much appreciated. And I would also like to thank everyone for coming here today to celebrate my mother's life. Again, many thanks.
Are there any other family or close friends that want to say anything, or we can open it up to her friends and individuals that would like to say a few words? They've already spoken. They spoke, so.
Well, my name is Winnie. This is Linda Randy, and my husband Carl. And Ina was a dear personal friend, but she was also a big help with an organization that we ran called Compassion and Choices, and she supported that organization to the units of 600 members here in Sarasota. Many use the meal she paid for 20 people in the private dining. When my finger out, she did that. But what I wanted to say about Ina was we come from the same part of the world, New England, and specifically Stamford, Connecticut. And we lived in a house on the river that comes into the harbor of Stamford, looking at the lighthouse. And Ina lived on exactly the other shore, looking at the lighthouse. You know, we found that out about each other. We just were sisters. We also shared property. She had a wonderful home where we grew up there in Massachusetts, near Lenox, and spent many years, and it was a vast property. But our family has a home that will be 100 years old next year. Dear little lake in Norfolk, Connecticut. So she'd have to get to Norfolk from New York or Stamford to get to her property. So she always loved it when we were going up again May 16th, every time we go and tell her how green everything is up there. And she loved the rocks, the walls that are made of woods. So Connecticut, Massachusetts. So I will deeply miss her. And she's a forever part of my heart. And we love you too, Mary. We see you from New York all the time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So, I'm Steve Biles. I'm retired from U College of Florida. I was the rector of New Music U College. Ina was the godmother of New Music U College. It simply wouldn't have come into being without her. I just want to tell you how we met. Mentioned that Ina was involved with the U College Library Association. So I had led a performance with Ron Silver at the Ringling Museum of John Cage Slugworks. And he thought it was just a one-off. Well, later, that was in November, shortly after that, there was a reception for the New College Library Association in College Hall. And I arrived, and I was talking to some people, and suddenly this very dignified, handsome woman approached and said, "May I join your group?" And of course, so we were all introducing ourselves. And I'm Ina Schnell. And she was so confident and so interested. And so we were introducing ourselves, and I said, "I'm Steve Lyles, I'm from New College." I said, "Oh, are you the Steve Lyles that led that wonderful performance of the John Cage songbooks?" All right, you know in the movie Funny Girl, when Fanny Bryce meets Nicky Arnstein, and the way they directed, it's on her face, she's going, Nicky Arnstein. That's kind of how I felt. I don't know what happened to the other people who was nearby. But that was how we met. And Ina lent her material support, she lent moral support. She helped us bring some of the great artists of our day to New College. She was a very caring person, and I will miss her very, very much.
I'm Martin Tucker, and I'll say a few words about myself and Ina later, but I wanted first to say that Bernice Davis, who was a very close friend of hers, couldn't come today, and she wanted to send her love to Ina. I met Ina through going to a reception with Bernice, and she was absolutely fascinating person. And that's one thing I remember now, Eric, is that she was always involved in wanting to be on the cutting edge of things. So when you spoke about the minimalist decoration, I thought of all that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I am Sarah Pappas. My first introduction to Ina was she was in her 80s, and we were at a lunch in the Van Wezel lobby, and we had an argument. That was how I met her. So I remember her smiling at the comment. She also was a fierce debater. The Ringling College was thinking of opening their new museum, and she was an ardent supporter of the Ringling Museum. And she said, we can't have two in town, it'll destroy the Ringling Museum, and argued. I said, no, the Ringling Museum is big enough, we can have two in town, but we argued back and forth, and people told us to be quiet. So I later got to know her. She was a member of our book club for many years, or I joined her book club. And we became fast friends, and she got me to support many of the wonderful causes that she cared so much about. But I also know that she had a wonderful marriage with the first husband who made her safe and secure. But I want to say how lucky she was to find Arthur Hankowitz later in life, who brought her not only love, but happiness, laughter, and tap dance.
And biking and traveling.
Thank you. Yep. Anybody out here that wants to?
Hi, I am the sister of Arthur Hankowitz. I'm his longtime love and partner. So we got to know each other through many family get-togethers. We celebrated holidays, Passover, etc., all together. And even Eric was invited and came sometimes, so it was a family get-together all around. The two of them had a wonderful, wonderful relationship. And Arthur loved her deeply and respected her, which was a big thing for him. As a doctor, he had a very inflated ego. And so he had a lot of respect for her, which was wonderful. Anyway, I want to say that we're all missing Ina, but we're missing Arthur as well. because he was a kind of a special guy. And
I enjoyed many Monday evenings of playing Scrabble with Ina. We had so much fun. First, we played at Water Club, and then as she moved here, we then played here. We had wonderful times. One little memory I've had of Ina, who was always so fashionable and chic and always looked great. On occasion, I would admire a scarf she would wear. And she would say, "I bought it from the cart." Now we were both from New York, and she didn't want to tell her well. I would buy her something else. She said, "Oh, I bought that 2 weeks ago when I was up in New York. I bought it from the cart." It made it sound like she was buying from a boutique in Paris. She was buying it from the street, the man that sold it on the street in New York. But Ina had such an air of elegance, it looked like it came from a boutique in Paris.
Hello, I'm Snyder, and I'm director of the library section. I worked with Ina for 8 years. During the time I was consulting with the foundation, just as it was being formed, she was one of the founding board members, one of the brains, and the love of books and libraries and people was just manifest in the wonderful work and the organization that she helped create. And I know she'll be missed by readers all over Sarasota County. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard Hopkins. I'm the artistic director of Florida Studio Theater. We have known Ina for probably at least 3 decades. And one of the first things I was thinking last night a lot about Ina, knowing that we had this celebration today. And one of the things that struck me most about Ina when I first met her, and whenever I think about her, is her great sense of taste and her love of art and her love of all things beautiful. And her love of Florida Studio Theater and her great support of that little theater when we were first starting until it became a more substantial theater in recent years. And that Ina always knew that theater was much more than diversion, that it was a door. It was a door to the world, a door to the heart of humanity, and a vision for all that humankind could be, should be, and sometimes shouldn't be. For Ina, theater was itself a celebration of life. Every show. Theater and art is a guru for Ina, a wise sage holding, as it were, a mirror up to nature. And people come together to see theater, and she understood this, that we came together to decide whether or not what we're seeing on stage is fitting for this world that we're trying to take care of, whether or not this is appropriate or not appropriate for our children. Ina knew that art and the purpose of art is maybe very much like the apple tree. The purpose of the apple tree maybe is to apple the earth. And the purpose of art is maybe to make it more beautiful. And Ina was always striving for more beauty, and we loved her for that. So bless you, Ina, for all you've done for us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joan Gallo, and I just wanted to add one little thing. Ina was a remarkable and very special personal friend to me since I came to Sarasota. There was a side to Ina that I saw, and perhaps others didn't always have that chance, which was a girlish kind of silliness, where she could be flirtatious, she could giggle, she could, chat about girly things. And I always found that to be remarkable, because here was this woman with great style and grace, incredible power in the community, who was just being kind of silly. And I think that added to what an extraordinary person she was. So I thank you for letting me share that with you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Susan Montel. I'd just like to add something to what Joan said. The beautiful Ina, who was so generous with her time and with her resources and so on, and very dignified. But with Arthur, Arthur had another side to him. Arthur could be bawdy, naughty. He wrote very funny limericks and lyrics. And he brought, I think, I didn't know Ina before she knew Arthur. I knew Arthur first and then Ina. But I think he brought some things out in her that she just loved. And she confided in me not so long before she died that Arthur Ankowitz was the love of her life. He's saying.
Hi, I'm Mark Ormond, and I met Ina in 1994 when I came to work at the John and Mabel Ringel Museum of Art. And at that time, there were only two couples that supported contemporary art in a serious way, and it was Jean and Ina, and Don and Heather Chapel. And we could never have done the Joseph Boys show, this exhibition called Blowing the Boundaries, which is when I met Steve. And of course, that kickstarted New Music, New College. And as has already been said, Ina was a leader in this community, but a quiet leader. She put things together behind the scenes. She put people together. She made things happen. And when I served on the Arts Council with her after I left the museum, she came up with this idea that's already been mentioned of a festival called On the Edge. It was to bring together all the different arts organizations in town and to get them to sit down at the same table. And that was a remarkable thing. And the festival was fantastic, but I always felt that it wasn't as great as she might have liked. I reminded her that she had planted the seeds for collaboration that we would see the fruits of much later. And I remember 3 years later, was Robert DeWarren, who was in charge of the ballet, and the Circus Arts Conservatory, Pedro and Dolly were sitting at the table. That 4 years later, the Sarasota Ballet did a ballet, contemporary ballet that included circus. So Ina, I think the ripples of and tidal waves of Ina's vision for this city are still with us.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I just wanted to say something as myself. And that was Richard and I, she won Richard and I, this is how we met her, at a raffle. And we were this little itty bitty theater in a hut in the mud over there, trying to do art, no air conditioning. And we were so scared to go to her big house on the quay, and we were supposed to be scintillating. And we were driving a little yellow VW, like, how are you gonna do this? Because we were just sort of like, wild young artists thinking, oh no, what are we gonna do? But as we walked in and saw those black olives, which anyone was ever at her party, there were giant black olives. And there was the most gracious, beautiful woman who I got to know over 30 years with Richard. And he said so much about her. The only thing I would love to add is, if you didn't know, she went to school in the snow. She went to this progressive school growing up outside in the cold. They did not go indoors. All lessons were outside. It was a philosophical feat to go there. And she would tell me about that. And I thought, that's where she got that aesthetic mind that was so clear and crystalline. And then she also spoke about growing up in Texas and how she saw the people of color having to walk in the back alleys and people that worked for her parents not able to come through the front. And then you learned where she gained her empathy, that little girl that stared at the world around her and knew it wasn't right. So I always felt those qualities, that really aesthetic mind and that really deep heart, was always ever present. And as I look around, she was a steward for so many of us as organizations and as people. But what a more beautiful thing to be as a steward of life and people.
Good afternoon, I'm Sarah Beth Kalajian, and I met Ina when I came to work at her beloved Selby Library when it finally opened in the place that she had dreamed it could be in the heart of town. And we quickly formed a partnership around the Reading Festival. Ina taught me something that I will never forget, and I believe this to my core. She said, reading and writing will help young people discover who they're going to be when they become. And so I was in awe of her organizational skills with the Reading Festival and so many details she managed. But what a lot of people didn't know was in the days before the festival, Ina had arranged for the authors and artists, illustrators to visit school classrooms. And she wanted to make sure that every child in the Sarasota County school system had a chance to be inspired by a storyteller. At the festival, every child got a book, and after the festival was over, she entrusted me with thousands and thousands of books to distribute to children that she knew might never have their very own book. It won't surprise you to know that Ina was the first person that we invited to be on our Baby Library Foundation board, because we knew if we had Ina's support, she lent us her encouragement, and what a force she was. So I will remember that Ina helped me, and this really touched my heart. She helped me discover and fulfill the dream of making sure that libraries in Sarasota County had some support and could be what they, just an excellent source for the community.
Hi, my name is Ron Silver, and I work with Steve. I have since the beginning of New Music New College. But what I'm thinking is, listening to all of what we hear today about all the arts organizations, all the educational institutions, libraries, think of the untold number of lives that she touched, people who she never knew, people who never knew her. That is an incredible life.
Thank you. And yes, that's where we give and we remember Ina for who she was, who she is, the lives that she touched, and just the memories. And that's what carries on, and that's what gives the eternal life, that the legacy that carries on is through these stories that continue to shine and continue to move forward. So thank you, and we remember and give praise and just celebrate Ina for all that she was. And yes, the joys, the laughters, the arguments, the naughtiness, the silliness, that's what makes her who she is, and that's what makes her a person and a lovely individual. We now continue with Amazing Grace.
Amen.
read the mourner's Kaddish.
Before I do, I'd like to share with you that I'm a resident of Plymouth Harbor for 11 years, and that Arthur and I were our very good friends. In fact, Arthur wrote a book of poems, and one is about my husband. So we were really close. We knew them on Longboat. I did go to Ina's house and saw this wonderful art and got all excited and told her I was a docent at the Ringling Museum, where I had been for 18 years. So she said, "Are you a member?" I said, "Of course." She said, "Have you given to the foundation?" I went home and wrote a check. And in addition, I worked at the Reading Festival because Ina called me up and said, "What are you doing? You're an educator, come down and work at the festival." I can't tell you how many things she involved me in. Besides, we had lunch together, dinners together, and a wonderful time together. She was a very, very important part of my life and taught me so much. And I know she wasn't religious, but she did know I was Jewish, although my name was Johnson. And I know she'd appreciate the Kaddish because it's just a prayer honoring people. Let me tell you a little bit about this prayer. It's a very ancient prayer. It goes back to the time of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. It's a prayer that praises God. It doesn't mourn for anybody. The word Kaddish means sanctification, and it's a sanctification of a beautiful life lived. It's Aramaic, not Hebrew. So it's in the language that Christ would have spoken at that time. And it's an expression of divine judgment at a time when a person might become bitter and reject God. It's a public declaration of the belief that God is great and holy and gives us a beautiful life. And I hope you can join me in saying the Kaddish. It's usually said standing. It's up to you if you'd like to. I'll say it first in Hebrew or Aramaic, and then in English. You have both sides. Yisgadal
v'yikadash shmei rabbah
B'yomo
divra kirutei
Chayim V'yomei
afutei
V'chayehon V'yom
iPhone v'yomachon
Chayei D'chol
hayei t'kol Beit Yisrael Ba'ala v'zman kariv v'nu Amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabbo Mevorach V'yolam U'mayor Yisborach V'yistabach V'yisborach V'yisnaseh V'yisadal V'yisalel Shmei D'chudeshu B'richu Le'elam Mikol B'rechotzo V'shiroto V'tishbachoto V'nechamoto Damirom V'yomo V'yimru Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabbo Min Shemayu V'chayim Olenu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. Oseh Shalom V'momo Hu Yaseh Shalom Olenu V'yal Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. And now would you join me in English? Let the glory of God be extolled. Let his great name be hallowed.